So this is module 8. Module 7 has been pre-recorded. You have it. Module 8, we are going to deal with a very interesting topic: effective management of generations. Effective management of generations. And we're going to cover these topics: generations in workplace. The first generation as the traditionalist. The second generation, we call them the baby boomers. The third generation, which is Generation X. The fourth generation, which is Generation Y. The fifth generation, the fourth generation, that is Generation Y. The fifth, of course, should be the Generation Z. But the point is that this topic, this model is dealing with up to Generation Y. I only mentioned Generation Z just for knowledge purposes. Then we want to see the generational differences, and then also look at the common grounds that we can meet them and how we can resolve conflicts. And then the last one is all the best. So the reason why this topic is very important is this. Now, we are working in an environment where we have different generations of people who are working together to achieve organizational objective. And it's very important that as we do that, we understand generations so we know how to relate to them, because each of them have been affected by certain incidences, okay, that happened during their time. And so, for instance, if you have Generation Y, Generation Z, same as millennials, yes, I know. So if you are having those who were not computer savvy, that generation, it becomes very difficult dealing with generations who were born whilst they were computers, okay? So the way they relate is very different. So you have generational gaps within an organization, and that it doesn't help with smooth communication, because a baby boomer might be dealing with somebody who is Generation Y, and there will be a lot of disagreement because of where they are all coming from, what has shaped their attitude, and also the culture within which they grew up. So these things are very, very important. This topic has come up. At first, we're dealing with personality traits, okay? But these personality traits largely is also affected by the culture within which we grew, okay? But it's important that this is dealt with in a broad perspective as we are doing, so that we understand generations and how their activities, how they think, and their behavior, their attitude, and how that affects the work environment. So workplaces can present challenges management in terms of handling different generations. And as older workers delay retiring and younger workers are entering the workforce, the environment then becomes very patchwork of varying perspective and experiences. So when it happens that way, what we need to do is to know where these guys are coming from. While having various cultures in one place can present communication problems and conflict, and the benefit of such variety in the workplace outweighs it. If we understand which generation each person is coming from, it becomes easier for us to relate, to them. So what we'll be doing in this chapter is to present the generations and their characteristics, and then see the grounds that we can meet and resolve issues, how we can communicate with these generations, and that is going to help us achieve our organizational objective. Now, the term or the construct generation is actually the construct generation is used to describe different values and attitude between one generation and the other. So if you see generational gap, we are referring to different values and attitude between one generation and the other. And it is typically used to describe gaps. Is different. It's used to describe gaps between parents and children. Now, since 1960, the term has been used to describe the clash one group has with another. in various settings. The workplace is such an environment where different generations do that kind of, they intermingle and deal with each other, and which is why this is very important. Now, there are basically 4 generations. I have added one, which is 5, which one of our colleagues just prompted, sent another name for it, which we know as millennials. And you see that that is colored in red. So the first one is the traditionalist, which they were born before 1946. So if we have some people here who were born before 1946, then they are the traditionalists. That's how we call them. And then the baby boomers who were born within 1946 to 1964, when they were born. And then we have the Generation X, who were between 1965 to 1979. Okay, and then the Generation Y, which is between 1980 to 2000. And then the Generation Z, or the millennials, who are between 1990 to 2010. So these are the groups of generations that we have. And it is important that we understand, we are saying that because humans live on average between 77 and 80 years, primarily 4 potential generations might exist in their workplace. And the 4 generations that could present, that could be present are the ones that I've talked about, the traditionalists, the baby boomers, and the Generation X and the Y. Of course, we have the Generation Z. And understanding the background, the attitude, and the work styles of each generation is essential for leaders, managers, and supervisors if they actually want to effectively coach and communicate so that they get that understanding. Okay, if that is very paramount, then we need to understand the generation. We might be fighting with people in our organization, and that fight might be needless. We might not be agreeing with some other people because of the culture in which they grew up. So before we get into the details of this generation, we are going to learn what defines a generation. What defines a generation? Well, I'm saying that the period is a factor to dividing generation into groups. Now, the 4 generations have time ranges that define their period. For example, the traditional generation represents people in the generation born before 1946. The baby boomers are people born between 1946 and 1964. And the Generation X represent people born between 1965 and 1979. And Generation Y represent people born in 1980 and 2000. Now, each period are experiences that shape the attitudes and the values of each generation. And in addition, the interaction between generations is also a factor in shaping the subsequent generation. So for example, Generation X sought to be different by the larger, more influenced baby boomers, and this thinking affects the behavior and their preferences. The rollout of the baby boomers to Generation X, there was a carrying effect, okay, that affected the Gen X guys. Okay, so for those of us who are between those ages, 1965 and 1970, I believe that most of us largely might be in this group, okay, and a few that will be in the Gen Y. Okay, so employee to employee perspective is very, very crucial. Now, that shows how different generations interact with each other, especially when you're working in groups or in teams. And one generation, which is, for instance, the Generation X or Y, who are born with computers already in existence, will not understand very well working with someone who doesn't appreciate the way computers, can assist us in doing our work. They will not be interested in manual work. But the baby boomers have lived that life and they have transitioned to, computers. So they are not used to communicating using devices, but rather doing face-to-face because that's what has shaped them. Okay, so the generation gap between employees could be seen more in the modes of communication, the words and gestures used. These things underline. The generation gap between employees could be seen more in words of communication, the modes of communication, and the words and gestures. So the manager perspective is also another sensitive area where generation gap in this situation could be different if the relationships start on the wrong foot. For managers, knowing that there are differences in the way generations communicate, view authority, lifestyle balance, and relationship is just the beginning. So the manager must also plan how to address these issues proactively and avoid difficult or tense situations. Having difficult situation at work will lead to poor morale and productivity, which will reflect on the manager's performance. Okay, so it is very important that this generation thing that we are going through, we understand that because we have differences in generation, there are generational gaps. Our mode of communication, the words we use, and gestures may offend other generations that we work with in a team or in teams. So for instance, this generation, which is the millennial generation, they are actually not captured here. They use the word baddest. I don't know whether any of you have heard this before. Can anybody respond? Baddest.
Yes.
And the baddest to indicate that the thing is good, extremely good. Okay. A certain generation uses a word like the thing is crazy. Okay. Just to say how good the thing is. But the older generation, baby boomers, if you say this thing is crazy, literally knows craziness as something that not meant to be good. But the word baddest, which is supposed to be in the negative for the baby boomers or even the generation X, is being seen by generation Y and baby boomers as something that is good. In other words, language within this period has evolved. It has evolved, and that we need to be very careful to know, to understand some of these gaps so we know how we communicate with people. So we are saying that as a manager, you need to be aware of this, so you know how to cross these generational gaps. So let's talk about the traditionalists, and I'll be doing some reading with other things interspersed because I do not want you to really lose anything out of it just because you also be writing exams on, and that's why I've sought to use this approach so that I don't leave the meat out. Okay, so what we are saying with the traditionalists, we are saying that before 1946 is what those born before 1946 is what classifies the traditionalists. Okay, now let's do something. Can anyone check someone born somewhere 1940? So dates, if the person is living, how old would be that person? Can someone check it for me? (1940). So date. Hello?
Yeah, dog. The person will be about 82 years.
82 years. So if it's even 1946, the person will be
76.
76 years. Okay. So we classify them as traditionalists. So I hope you know those people you classify under this group. obviously they should be on leave, isn't it? So if there's anyone who is in service now, apart from our president, then that person has a problem, isn't it? That person is a traditionalist. Now, their background touched on dealing with some incredible social issues. Now, for example, a traditionalist may have experienced the Great Depression, World War I, and World War II. The military influenced their way of life since war was a great part of their culture event, and many served during this era. So if you are in a church and you have someone, I mean, from maybe 70 years and above, you're dealing with that person, you should have this at the back of your mind. The traditionalists were brought up during the tough times where scarcity of resources was caused by economic troubles and war. In the US and Europe, the military and social program mode was prevalent and individually was not celebrated. Traditional values in terms of, family structures and gender roles influence workplace during this generation. During this generation, they were influenced by the gender roles and the family structure, where they know that a woman's place is actually the kitchen. You get it? Where they know that women were to be wives and men are those who have to go, there and then hustle. So that if you are dealing with such person in a team, which is practically maybe not at a job environment, but maybe in a social environment where you have these guys there and they see you as a woman, their perception about the role you are playing now will be critical. They would not want a woman to be in the leadership role. I don't know whether I'm making sense. They would not, because these are people who have a history that has defined the culture within which they lived in. So men mostly dominated the workplace. Do you get the point now? They dominated the workplace. So if they see you today, now trying to rank up to a senior position as a lady Winnie, if you are trying to do that, like the role you're playing now in the Black Queens or Black Star or whatever, then, where is this guy coming from? Where have we lost our senses? That's what the person will be talking about, because the history that he knows of what has shaped who he is quite different, okay? In essence, the traditionalists had to work hard and see that as the way to live life. Hard work. So when they see, and it was normal that in an organization, if you have these guys there, they expect that if you come into the organization, it will take you like 30 years before you become a manager, right? So all of a sudden, this young guy comes in and then they see that he's rising very, very fast and they do not get it, okay? So anything the guy does becomes an offense to them. The guy is also probably a generation Y who understands speed. So that kind of problem will emerge. Now we are saying characteristics of the traditionalists are, traditionalists like to be recognized for their hard work. Hard work, okay? Traditionalists also see work as team efforts and avoid conflict. So they are good team players. They are good team, they don't work individually. They don't want to take the glory alone. This group is also technically challenged and they may struggle to learn new technology. They are not interested. If you create a WhatsApp group, they will not be part. In fact, they don't have a phone. They have the YAM one. They don't have a phone that can connect on the WhatsApp. And they also prefer lecture style training over the web base, because that's where they come from. Do we get the whole thing? That's where they come from. So if you are dealing with such a person, then you are a little bit challenged, okay? Today, traditionalists comprise of 5% of the working population in the US. I don't know about Ghana. They are 5% of the US, and they are retired. Nevertheless, traditionally bring a strong ethic to the job place. So these are traditionalists. Okay. Now we go to the second generation, who are baby boomers. Now this generation has members that were born between 1946 and 1964. Baby boomers were the product of post-war efforts to absorb shoulders returning home from battle. The US government passed a GI Bill of Rights in 1944, which gave shoulders means to obtain a home job and start a family. Do you appreciate the history? This result was a boom in childbirth. So they started making babies, which is where the title baby boomer is derived from. Baby boomers grew up in an era of prosperity and growth in the United States while experiencing high level of education and upbringing. So that is what they experienced. Okay, that is what. And we are saying that baby boomers grew up in the year of innocence during the 1950s and saw model life portrayed on television. Television was a large component of baby boomers' upbringing. As mothers began working outside of the home, baby boomers grew up more with television as they moved through the 1960s. Their generations was becoming more defined. And in the 1960s brought about social changes in the US, like civil rights, different kinds of war in Vietnam, the rebellion against established institutions like the hippie revolution. The hippie revolution is just amazing. The term hip applied to beats. It was applied to beats of the 1950s, such as the Allen Ginsberg, who are musicians using those beats. So if you hear the hippie revolution, it was a kind of a revolt against the US style, okay? Said baby boomers generation represent the departure from the tradition and the movement towards changes in society, beliefs, and attributes. Now let's look at their characteristics. Now, baby boomers are career focused and enjoy work achievements. That is one. They like doing complicated work that makes a difference. Baby boomers are very competitive and they equate their wealth by their status and position at work. Did you get that? They equate their wealth by their status and position at work. So if you are employed, you are Gen Y or Gen X, you are employed, and they realize that what you are bringing on the table, or you even get a baby boomer who is on the interview panel, believe you me, you really have to work for your probation period. You really have to work to justify the position that you have to be appointed to. Okay.
True.
So they, yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm saying that what you said is very true. Very, very true. They are not easy to deal with.
All right. So then baby boomers are resourceful and look for different ways to win. They are resourceful. Baby boomers do prefer a hierarchy work structure and may find it difficult to work in a flexible environment. Why? These are people who respect standard operating procedures. And trust you me, when there is an emergency, then you have to circumvent the process. They will tell you that, hey, you have to follow procedure. Okay. Finally, baby boomers tend to favor face-to-face interaction instead of remote means like emails, texts, etc. Just as baby boomers. This is who they are. Baby boomers are work-centric. They are hardworking, motivated by incentives. They tend to work long work weeks, to be workaholics, and think that everyone should do the same in order to achieve or to advance in their career. They don't entertain lazy guys, okay? If you are coming in, you must work. And these are the people in most organizations, they call them the bahache. You understand? All right? They are there and they'll tell you that, see, when we came here, it took a long time. We went through the mill. We have to do this. We have to do that. You don't just come and you are given a supervisory position. It doesn't happen. Okay? It doesn't really happen. These are baby boomers, and that's what they will tell you. Since baby boomers know they make up most of the working population, since they know they make up the working population, they tend to have more of their generations connect with them and making it more difficult for non-baby boomers to affect the organization. So let's check. You see the generational, they are within the ages of what? Baby boomers are within the ages of what? They are 1946 to 1964, right? 1946. So someone who was born, let's say 1964 to 2020 will be how many years old? 2020. That person should be 56, right? So these guys probably might be on their way out. But this is what they enjoy during their time. And then we have the Generation X. Now, this Generation X guys, they are the segments of people who were born between the mid-60s and the late 70s. They are the generation right after the decline of the baby boomers of the post-war era. And Generation X lives during a time when the country shifted from manufacturing to servicing. Now, they shifted from manufacturing to servicing. And this generation grew up with technology as part of their lives. They experienced computer, video games, cell phones, emails. They have seen the evolution of technology, understand its origin. Generation X also experienced difficult times in the 1980s and learned to live in tough times. Finally, Generation X was raised in two-income homes or single-parent homes. Two-income homes and single-parent homes, right? And these situations force many Generation X to be placed in daycare. Their background allowed them to develop new characteristics that went against the baby boomers. So you put a Generation X and baby boomers in a group to work, you have an issue. Because of that generational gap, there will be gap issues of what? Language. There will be gap relating to achievements. Why Generation X have a different mindset, the baby boomers also have a different mindset based on their belief system or the culture that has molded them. Now let's see the characteristics. Characteristics of Generation X are they prefer autonomy, independence, and refuse micromanagement. They refuse it. Okay? And of course, maybe Winnie, you are in Generation X, I can see. Right? You also be there. I don't know about Dave. Dave, you should be in Generation X. They embrace change and are change drivers. They embrace change and are change drivers, okay? They use and deploy technology effectively in workplace. They are entrepreneurs and like to try new ideas and seek new opportunities. David has changed how many jobs over the past 20 years? Generation X is individualistic and independent. Okay, I just wanted to sink. Generation X is individualistic and what? Independent. So,
it's true, Doc.
So Generation X is, they are self-sufficient and flexible, either than the other generation who are not flexible. Generation X can bend the rule to achieve something significant for the organization. Okay? This character trait enabled them to change jobs more frequently than the previous generations. They usually see this as a way of moving up the corporate ladder. My goodness. Okay, so this generation is more ethnically diverse and is better educated over their previous generation. So this generation are not the, in fact, if you look at generation that intermarries very well, it should be the Generation X. All right, because it's from the baby boomers that is where we started accepting. I think civilization had gone to its root, and then now people accepting the fact that, I mean, an Ashanti can marry a Northerner, all right, or a Northerner can marry an Ewe. Even though you have those traditionalists and baby boomers are still there, if in your hometown, if they are still there, Ebusiapin and others, then you have an issue, okay? If they are the leader in the family, then you have an issue. So the new and the young, I mean, chiefs that have been, installed, okay, that have been, they have installed as chiefs now. You realize that they are more inclined to ideas. I saw a publication today about Togbe Apeze having some sort of architecture design of how he wants to see the Volta region. You get it? So if you study his generation, you would know why he's thinking. But now the baby boomers will not want to go into that areas. You understand? They won't. So you realize that this generation, so if you are in a team or you are a manager and you are choosing team leaders, you should know which generation to choose as team leader. And those ones that will sit and, especially when you want some innovation in what you are doing and you want the work to, I mean, people, somebody who accepts, is flexible, accept other views. That person is not too like this guy, F.W. Taylor's scientific management, who is more kind of rigid, okay? But if you take somebody within the Gen S, you realize that now this guy is flexible, they require innovation, they accept ideas and other things, and that is going to help move the team. Gen X is more willing to try new things because of their technical experience. That was lacking in another generation, and they welcome new technology into their life, easily adapt to them quickly. Generation X is also tolerant of other lifestyles. The traditionalists were not, and accept this as part of the change in their environment. Generation S perspective allowed them to foster a more accepting environment at work. They are not a complaining type, but they will not allow you to micromanage them. And then you come to the Gen X, the fourth generation. Now, the Gen Y, sorry, the fourth generation. So Gen Y, or the millennial generation, was born between 1980 and 2000. All right. So the Generation Y group had technology as a normal part of their life and does not know what it is to be without technology. All right. Or computer and cell phone. They do not know. There's no alternative when there's no computer because they were born into it. This generation can thrive on electronic communication and prefer that than face-to-face. Generation Y prefers using internet as a means of learning and making purchases. They are exposed to the vast amount of information, music, and media than any other generation. Their generation are the generation that is very blessed because all they came to meet was speed. All right. If somebody would want to is doing his book and he's using this Generation Y guys go there and see that the printing press, they are using the old one that they have to bind, they have to do this. And then there's a digital one that after printing, it sorts, it binds, and then does everything. It cuts and then binds and does everything within maximum 1 minute for each book, even if the book is about 100 pages. That is what the guy came to meet. Generation Y came to meet the fact that he can reach 10,000 customers by a click of a button. Okay, so when you are saying that we should go and do float and then do his accent, that what would be your coverage? How many people are you reaching? It's a waste of money. You see the generational gap. That becomes an issue because he believes that you can reach a number of people virtually. They do not appreciate the face-to-face interaction. So Generation X was exposed to more group interaction through this generation, was exposed to more group interaction through play groups, team sports, and other group activities than the previous generation. This is due in part to their parents' higher education. Their parents obviously might be the Generation X during education and success. Finally, this generation is used to getting what they want when they want it. So you have a kid who is a Gen Y. And if the kid says, Daddy, I want this, and you do not really explain to the kid why the kid doesn't need that thing at that time, then that becomes a problem. They will get it at all costs. And let me tell you, in work environment where you have demo and other things emerging, it is this group that leads them. Because when they need salary, increment, it is just a matter of mobilizing this generation, and then you are done. Politicians can use this same generation to achieve their objective, okay? Because when they say change, it is not the Gen X, it is the Gen Y, because they would get what they want. Once they want it, they will get it. So the speed of technology and information coupled with rapid development systems have made this generation expect things to be done faster. They don't understand. You understand? They expect things to be done faster. So when you come and you're a politician, you come and say that, or you work in an organization, come and say that, oh, we are going to change this and that. They are looking at this in a month or two, whilst you are looking at it from maybe 3 or 4 years perspective. That's what they are looking at. And that means that one will have to be strategically, alert, all right, to be able to absorb some of these things within this generation, okay? So the characteristics of Generation Y is confident and achievement-oriented. Gen Y will question authority without fear and challenge ideas and motives. Did you hear that? They will question authority. Usually what is happening in Facebook and all that, when young guys are insulting the leaders, have you seen check their generations. Check. All right. They don't fear anything. Generation Y relies on technology to do their jobs and expect to have the resources available when they are at work. Gen Y is motivated by benefits that give them the ability to have flexibility schedules and less motivated monetarily. So for them, motivation is not just money. Okay. And once you're able to identify that, they want, you see, most of them get that satisfaction when they have been able to achieve something at their age. Even though money is part of the drivers, it is not a panacea for them. Okay. Actually, the fact that they feel confident, the fact that they are able to tell you their mind, the fact that they are achievement oriented. There was one guy within that generation that I trained. The guy is just such like a beast. The guy is too good. And at the age of 30, already has 2 masters. He's already an engineer, has already farms, and then he's on a top-notch company. I mean, at the managerial position. In fact, he achieved that at the age of 8. Attended how many? 12 interviews. And the one that they rejected him, it turned out that the people thought that he was what? Overqualified. And he prides himself in that. It's not too rich, but he's not worried. Okay. So you need to know how this generation behave. We say this generation is achievement oriented, and they are also what? Confident. Now, having known this, let's look at the generational differences. Now we have the traditionalists, we have the baby boomers, we have Gen X, Gen Y. Okay. Gen Y is also normally referred to as millennials, but millennials are almost, they are most of the time referred to as what? The Gen Z. But because this is not talking about the Gen Z people, we'll leave it there. Now, we are saying that the background differences among the 4 generations are the main factor in the formation of their attitude and values. So the use of understanding of technology is the main difference among the generation. Did you get that? That is very important. And the traditionalists have very little exposure and need for computer that we take for granted today. Even some baby boomers might struggle with technology. They tend to use it only as needed and usually only at work. On the other hand, Generation X and Y grew up with technology and they use it more as part of their lives. So technology changed the way humans communicate and process data. So the use or the non-use of technology creates a gap that could be seen by a generation as either an advantage or a disadvantage. So for instance, Generation X and Y could become easily frustrated with their older generations counterpart when they struggle with technology issues they see as easy. So for instance, an older man is coming to your office. Then you say that, sir, please let me send you the Google map. Then you send the Google map, then he will call you. So where did you say your office is? He said, but I've sent you the Google map. He said, so what do I do with this? I mean, how do I know? Then you become frustrated. It's, but Google map is something that everyone should know how to. I don't know whether you've been frustrated like that before. Okay. Then he'll get to some, he said, no, but the map is also saying that because the guy is a baby boomer, I mean, it's a traditionalist. Okay. Then he'll say that this kind, your technology, me, I don't like these things. So tell me where you are, which signposts am I to look at? And because you are X, you don't use signposts, you don't even look at your environment, what is there. So you don't even know the location to your house. I can tell you, I don't know the signposts on my road. Normally I give people Google Maps to come. And one old man I asked to come here, I virtually end up asking the guy to wait for me at Long Junction. And I went and picked him. Because the young guy who just came here, when I gave him the map, he's here. He's a Gen Z. Okay, he's here. So that technological gap becomes an issue. Media has boomed over the last 20 years. Television, computers, internet, and smartphone have increased the amount and availability of entertainment programs. Many Generation X and Y were raised with media as large part of their diet. Do you hear that? On the other hand, the older generation relied on human interactions for their daily entertainment. So this affects how the generation interact with each other. So for example, an older generation may prefer to speak with a co-worker face to face, but the younger would rather text or instant message during their conversation. And this TikTok and all that you see today, you realize the age they find themselves. So finally, social events like war and cultural revolution distinguish a generation background traditionally lived through many years of war, and it became a real part of their life. Baby boomers experienced the hippies revolution of 1960s, where opened the door to changes in the US society, okay? And Generation X and Y enjoy the benefit of changes, but they have not lived through the dramatic social events. Of course, maybe something that we have also witnessed that they should add to literature is COVID-19, right? I don't know the next generation that is going to come, but COVID-19, and then there's the monkey, this, and then there was Ebola. Okay, these were pandemics that hit Ebola. I don't know if it was classified as pandemic because it happened in some sports, but I mean, COVID-19 became something that, for the first time in our lives, we were locked down. We couldn't come out, and of course, that has increased our population anyway. Because now, wives were happy that husbands were camped; they could not go anywhere, and then perhaps on the low key, girlfriends were also suffering because now they didn't have access to other people's husbands. That was interesting. It was a period that really, I mean, this generation X and Y had also tasted something, but the baby boomers and the traditionalists would tell the story better because they have experienced some of these incidents before. Okay, so this kind of generational, I mean, the differences has to be established. We've talked about the issue of what? Computers as one. The other one, we've talked about the fact that the mode of entertainment, and we've talked about social media amongst others, okay, as being the main difference or differences between the baby boomers and the traditionalists as compared to the Gen Y and the Gen S people. So the background among the four generations are the main factors, as I said, in the formation of their attitude. And we need to be aware of that. So when it comes to loyalty to their employers, the older generation is more likely to stay with one employer. Do you understand? Their entire life. They can live. So if you see those who are able to enter into organization and retire with that only organization, check their background. You never get the Gen S and the Gen Y. David can tell you the number of companies he has changed over the period. All right. And I am of the view that the world is big, so you need to do so many things and taste a number of cultures, number of businesses in diverse, ways before you exit from this world. So you cannot stay in one organization for entire life. And people do that. Okay. And you know what informs that. So among the generations are different. Among the generations are different. This has to do with their background and the way each generation interacts with human beings during their time. As the generation progresses, their attitude towards authority is one that will challenge them. The older generation was taught to revere authority due to the military presence in the culture during the wartime. So yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. As the decades passed, the generations rebelled and eventually created an attitude of challenging the status quo. And that is the generation X and the generation Y. Something happened on our platform. One of our big men at school posted something, and I started challenging that person. And the older ones who are on the same age with, they called me and said, "Oh, but Dave, you cannot challenge this guy." I said, "But what he's saying doesn't really sit well with him." I said, no, please, it's all okay. Because they are not used to that. And because I'm a Gen X, I think that no, I want my independence. I don't want you to bruise my reputation. I mean, I'm not the type that you say things to me and I'll allow you to go. No, this is our generation, and it's worse with the generation Y. They will not. I mean, they will meet you with fights. If you really, I mean, you touch them, they are not going to allow you. Okay, and that is it. And the younger generations were brought up during a time where most parents work outside the home, leaving them in the daycares. The environment taught the younger generation to be independent. You see where the thing comes from, independent and self-sufficient. The older generation seeks to work with groups and think of others over themselves. When it comes to loyalty to their employers, and the older generation is more likely to stay with one employer and their entire life, if it is possible. This tendency was brought on by living through difficult times. And the older generation believes that devoting themselves to their job will bring rewards. Okay, that is not what is happening with our generation. The younger generation are not as loyal as you think. They will not be loyal. And that is why now when it gets to elections, people are being shocked, okay? Because, and unfortunately, it is the Gen Y and Gen X and Z. They are representing almost 80% of the world's population. So then we have a problem, okay? And you have more of the Gen Y and the Gen Z, rather in their bigger numbers. It is estimated that Africa in somewhere 2025 is going to have more of their youth, okay, within the ages of 18 to about 25. And that gives the African a very good workforce, okay, to work with. So now if you are a businessman and you are targeting customers to deal with, you need to do generational analysis. So you don't do only pastel analysis for, I mean, trying to see the external environment and then SWOT to do the internal environment. Now you need to do a generational, I mean, gap analysis as part of your competitive analysis to know which generation, I mean, you are dealing with. That is very, very important. Okay, so that is so challenging the status quo is another differentiator for these people, as I really said. So this is actually the generational difference. Finally, is experiencing technology. The younger generation experienced technology as a way of life. Generation X had technology grow into their lives, and Generation Y never did without it. They never did without it. The older generation was slow to adapt the use of technology as a social tool. The advent of social media networks and electronic communication gave the younger generation exposure to more detailed information about each other than the older generation. Today, I tell people that it was easier doing a PhD during those days than now. You know why? Those days, they didn't have more information. That's good. But this generation, you have more information, but you are limited. All right? These sophisticated tools that are being used now were not used during those times. Okay? So even though you have more information, You write an exam and you have to turn it in. You write a paper and you have to turn it in for plagiarism. What? Those times they were doing copying. Nobody cared. Okay? There was no software to check these things. And sometimes you go to the library, there's only one book that is there. And then somebody will go and pick it and then use it, and then we'll have to return, and another person will do that. There was this scarcity of some of these books. But then in our generation, you click online, you have everything. And yet it's very difficult to write without being caught that you plagiarize. So we found ourselves with, and there was one guy I sat in their PhD defense, and it was like you were roasting the guy. I was asking, but why? 3 hours of, serious banter just to defend your thesis. And it was just amazing. It was just amazing. I was just seated and I was asking. I went through the same thing. And you ask yourself, so you realize that though this generation have more, the challenges are very enormous. Okay. And we need to appreciate some of these things, and then we know how to deal with them. So the last but one is the common grounds. So where do we meet? Where do we meet? We say that in order to be successful in bridging the gap across generation, you must find common grounds that enable you to close the gap and effectively reach out opposing generations. This requires that you try to adapt to a communication style that works with each group, create affinity group, bringing people together and share knowledge. So how do you communicate effectively with different generations? We say that use TAP. The TAP method communicates to the point, adapt to, and be professional in your communication. That's the meaning of the TAP. Adapt and be professional in your communication. And we'll talk about that. So being sensitive to the way you communicate will help bridge the generational gap at work. Understanding that the older generation prefers face-to-face communication and the younger prefers electronic method should give you a base to form a flexible communication style that reaches all generations at work. And here is an easy way to adapt your communication style. Use the TAP method for communication. And you will have to think little before you communicate to someone, but the investment is worth it. Okay, so the TAP. The first one is set to the point. Second is adapt. And the third one is being professional. So the TAP, we can use this, then this is free knowledge. Apart from our exams, it can help us. So the first one is make your communication brief and succinct. The older generation will appreciate clarity and younger generation will appreciate brevity. So the mix. Change the method of communication, that's adapt. For your audience, if you are going to engage an older worker, make the effort to either call them or better yet, see them in person. They will feel respected and valued. For the younger generation, use email and instant messages to reach them. They will feel independent and not micromanaged. If you need to address the entire group, younger and older, in an email, make yourself available for follow-up by telling the group to reply, call, or see you in person if they have any question. You see how you bridge it. This is very key. The last one, be professional. When in doubt, communicate professionally. Avoid jargons and text abbreviations in your communication. Use salutations and close your communication properly. You will show the older generation that you respect them and set the example for younger generation on how to communicate professionally. I put something on my page, all right? My house manager. Then I added that was his birthday. And I said that this guy has been of immense help to me, blah, blah, say all. And one old man then went to my status and then replied me. that man, older man, could be your father. You are calling him a guy. Can you imagine? So you are calling him a, I said, say, I'm sorry. Then I went and changed it. In fact, I had to delete it and then recreate another one. Okay. But my peers knew that we could refer to ourselves as guy. But he saw that as very offensive. So we have to just change. So affinity groups of people sharing common interests, you can create set groups at work and give different generations a chance to work with each other. I mean, with an activity which is not directly related to work, and form groups so that they can accept each other. Okay. So the lack of knowledge could breed fear between generations or lead to misrepresentation. Sharing knowledge helps to break barriers and create an understanding and collaboration environment. There are many ways knowledge can be shared, such as you can set up a block. A block is actually something you create online, okay? And then people to share their views. You form focus groups, you create newsletters, and place an idea box where people can share ideas, okay? So that is also another means of, I mean, dealing with this generational gap. Then once these things are happening, there's certainly going to be, once we have this generation, conflict emerging, or conflict erupting from these generations working together. And it is normal to have conflict in workplace, and there could be positive side of conflict, but to the extent that it's more of behavioral issues, if more of language, if more of communication, one has to be very, very careful. So understanding generation can resolve a number of conflicts. And we say use the ACE techniques to manage older employees, acknowledge their experience, care for them and their interests, and exchange ideas and opinions with them. Okay. The ACE stands for acknowledge, caring, and exchange. So acknowledge older, the A, acknowledge older employees' experience and value, and the value they bring to the team. Older employees may feel if they are no longer valuable because of their age. Show them you have them by reflecting on their achievement and contribution to the team. I do that a lot. I do that when we go for a meeting and I see my other colleagues who are, I said, okay, our big man is here. And then maybe, can you give us an opening? In fact, I'm in a group, I'm a head of department of my department, that procurement, logistics and supply chain. And I have one of my lecturers, in fact, two of them, who taught me. And they are part of. In fact, I'm teaching lean operations with one of my lecturers this month. All right. So the question is, how are you going to deal with this thing? So anytime I call, I say, oh, prof, that person is not prof, but prof. So how do we deal with, do you want me to set the question so that you review? Do you have any marking for me to do for you? Anytime we get to an environment, I let them know, oh, this is Mr. Forinyako. He taught me lean operations, and I'm privileged now to be teaching with him and still learning from his feet. You want that person to be acknowledged, okay? And caring for your older employees. So what I do, sometimes I take his scripts and mark. All right, I do that. Sometimes when there are some meetings that he is not unable to come, I go and then ask for his absence, just for him to know. Recently, I'm teaching inventory management in one of the institutions other than mine, and then he normally sends a handout. So I asked, would you want to sell handouts this time? And then he says, not this time, because we don't have as many students as I expected. But the previous semester he sold. Okay, I'm teaching the class, but he sells his handout to the class. Normally, it is the lecturer who will do that, but I'm not interested because I'm a Gen X. I rather send the PDFs to them and the PowerPoints to them rather than that. So you need to care for them, exchange ideas, and ask for input from the older. You do that, and then they feel that they are part of you. Okay. If you sideline them, they will feel irrelevant because people now associate old age to something else, as if that they will also not grow. But the point here is that we have to use the ACE to build that kind of acceptance, okay? So that these guys will know that we accept, and that is going to resolve this conflict. So use the following tips to build a retention plan based on generational traits that work, okay? And take note of some of these things. Now, one, it said determine what values this person has based on their generational traits. Determine that. Think of things that could be a motivating factor like shadow, flexibility, incentive, and recognition. Now, two, prepare several focus questions that may lead to underlying issues. For example, you may ask questions about reasons why they are dissatisfied with the job. Be frank with your employees and tell them that you want to keep them and will set up a follow-up meeting to discuss possible solutions. Ask questions about their personal goals and career milestones and see how you can help them achieve. And be ready to become an advocate for your employee. This means that you may need to do some research or speak with key people in human resource to find out more solutions, and then work with the human resource contact to develop a retention plan. And they give solutions that are aligned with your organizational policies. So we are saying that if you want a retention plan based on generational traits, that people will not, your employees will not leave the organization just because of conflict or generational gaps and all that. And people leave because of some of these things. They don't fit in. I mean, you go and bring Generation Z, a young guy who was born within this chaotic internet and then cyber security and then blockchain. The person is within this context, okay? Hasn't seen how manual system worked. And then he comes in, he wants everything fast. And the people he's working with seem not to understand. So now he's being paid well, but out of frustration, will have to leave the job. Okay, so these are some of the things you do just to retain them. So we talked about the ACE, okay, and we also talked about the tips for the plan retention. And when dealing with generational gap issues, there's a hot zone that you must recognize and address. The hot zone is an area you know there is conflict, and it could be between two employees or group within the team. Take a moment and jot some of these down. Now, where I'm stressing are potential exams questions areas. That's why I'm stressing on that. First, you must acknowledge the hot zone exists. Ignoring it could result to more widespread hot zones. Next, you should engage the hot zone as soon as possible and provide feedback to all the parties. Set expectations with your employees on how to handle the future conflict. Hold one-on-one coaching with each employee involved in the hot zone and have him or her come up with ideas on how to make things better to avoid the hot zone issues. So learn the care model to handle generational conflict and issues. Care is to collaborate, acknowledge, respect, and be equal irrespective of age difference. Do you get the care? Collaborate, acknowledge, respect, and be equal irrespective of age difference. Is that okay? So, and that is what you see: care, collaborate, acknowledge, respect, and also teach your team that all members of the team are equal in value and contribution they bring to the team. It's important we do that. And here are some tips to create succession plan, right? So here we are saying that having a succession plan might also help resolve what the conflict. And a succession plan is a map of a career path for an employee. When you create a succession plan, you give the employee something to focus on in terms of the career. And when you are focused on a plan, they will be less susceptible to conflict because they are doing what it takes to achieve the goal of the plan. Now, this then is almost non-existent in most of our institutions in Ghana or probably in Africa. There's nothing like succession plan. It's there in print, but it doesn't work. Because the person who is training the other guy is thinking that the guy is going to take over from him immediately. So we will not teach you, but we will just leave you there. There are very few managers who think that their success as managers depend on the number of people they've trained. So they will build some sort of succession plan for them. So we are saying here are some of the tips to create succession plan. Determine a clear career goal. That is one. Make sure it is a real goal. Okay, and make sure it is attainable. Make sure it is time-driven. Consult with human resource department to determine what their requirements are. Consult with the head of department if the career path takes them to another area. And determine any of the educational requirement and provide guidance. Set up mentor program with someone currently doing what they want to achieve, and then track their progress. After you've done that, meet with them periodically to specifically discuss their progress on their succession plan. That is very important. So these are the tips, and this is also an exams area you would want to look at. Then we have the last one, which is best of all. We are saying that leveraging on the best of all generations at work would result in benefit that will help your workplace become unique. Become a better workplace. Each generation brings unique traits that can complement the other generation, especially the Gen X and Gen Y. Having various generations in place gives you the access to varying perspectives of ideas. That is the good part of it. Whilst the conflict can ensue from this, the good aspect of it is the fact that there's diversity, and that helps in decision making. You should avoid discounting the value of particular generation. Discount doing that, avoid doing that. Some benefits having multiple generations at work are: one, this is also an exams area. You gain a good perspective of external culture. You can generate more ideas based on varying experiences. An older generation can help younger generation refine their social skills, okay, because they have been there. And the younger generation can help the older one leverage on technology. And that's the synergy you get, and create a mentoring environment. So rather than see generational gaps as a threat to your organization, you should see it as something that can help the organization to be more diverse and refine their decision-making process. Now, keep in mind that whatever you have access to different views, ideas, and way of doing things, you have a source of knowledge that is profound and leverage for the organization's benefits. Learning from each other is possible if you create that environment. In order to achieve this, you must create opportunities for learning to take place, make sure it is safe, okay, and tie it into the team building goals. And the FIT model for meeting is a helpful way to create the learning environment in your meetings. The FIC stands for the frequent information, and the last one is, let me see, I think I mixed that one, but I'll retrieve it. So what does it do? We have frequent. Make sure your team meets frequently in team meetings environment. It can be once a month, once a week. Having your team together in a group will help engage each other, communicate, and then dialogue. And this is essential to any learning environment. Then we have the informal. It is not every day that you try to reach people in a formal manner. Okay, so make your meeting less formal. Sometimes you go for lunch and then you meet the guys around and then you just talk to them. It's also a form of informal meeting. Okay, you could that informal meeting, the whatever you discuss can be formalized later. Okay, so that is very, very important. Let me get the last one and so then the last one, like I said, it's the team building. So we have frequent, that is the FIT, F-I-T, frequent, informal, and team building. So make your meetings about team building, topics like updates, report, etc. are best delivered by other means like emails in a presentation. When your team gets together, celebrate achievement and discuss what went well, and then when there are challenges, let them know. It's also important that you embrace all the unfamiliar. Embracing the unfamiliar is something you need to do and help your team learn. Something that is not familiar, that is not part of the rule. Somebody brings something new. It's important that you do that. And it is easy to dismiss the unfamiliar. But that sends a wrong signal to your team. You are discussing about something. Somebody brings an idea that is not familiar to what you are discussing. Don't dismiss it. Don't say anything that will, kind of hurt that person. That will look as if what he has said doesn't make sense. Model the behavior by using lead model. This is what I wanted you to do. The lead stands for the following. Look for unfamiliar things in the workplace, engage it immediately, acquire more on the topic, disseminate the knowledge to the rest of them. And I've had this benefit from students where I teach them and something unique comes in. And like that guy I told you about, I had to give my pointer or my marker to this guy and sit down and take notes for him to teach. Because I realized that that guy had some knowledge in that area that was not in text, that was not in literature. And it was important to do that. So remember, lead is also something that you can use, that it can help to bring unfamiliar, conversation in meeting that you think that can help. You have to regulate that. Sometimes when you encourage that too much, it might disrupt the meeting, but something very feasible that a member, is bringing up, which might belong to a different generation, you must find a way to accommodate that. And that's why we say you can use the lead. So I think we've come to the end of the discussion. So this is model 8 that has been delivered. We will look at model 9 next week. So if you have any questions, let's discuss.